Well, good morning, and thank you all for joining us on this fine Colorado Wednesday morning. Today we're gonna get into some stuff. I'm sure a lot of you all are really good in understanding, and that's lockout, tagout procedures and some electrical job site safety. So I want to encourage everybody just to get involved in the dialogue today. Let's get into some discussions. We want to talk about not just lockout, tagout in the engineering control side, but where I would like to emphasize a lot of our focus today would be on the administrative control side. And that is ensuring you've got a documented lockout, tagout procedure, not just for electrical, but for any type of potential hazardous energies. And that's something that we want to make sure we address today too, is that lockout, tagout isn't just for electrical equipment, okay? It's for anything that has the potential of energy being used while under maintenance or installation. Okay, so, and that could be a number of things. That's not just electrical. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then we are going to go over just some general electrical safety for the job site. Everyone, or for the most part, the majority of this group today are out there doing that, and you're practicing your safety procedure and all your protocols out there, so it'll be a good discussion for us all to get into today. Before we jump into that, I wanted to open up the session here, and since our last meeting in January, we didn't have a whole lot of near misses and things like that we could advise to the group as far as what we need to be forward thinking about, or something you noticed on your job sites or in your office when it comes to, hey, you address something where something bad really could have happened. So does anybody out there have any near misses to identify and let the rest of the group know about? Anything we need to pay attention to or advise our groups on? Anybody got anything out there? The snow is one, right? Make sure you got the rock salt down, right? And everything is not so slick. Driving safety right now is also really important. We've got some pretty good dumps. You're seeing people all over the road, so just be careful that your fleet out there is really doing a good job as well. But anybody got anything they want to address? You know me, I'll start calling on people. Nothing. You're going to make it easy on us this morning, huh? I'm trying to think of something here in the office. I haven't noticed anything really here in the office in the last month as far as a safety hazard, but we always want to be mindful of those,
Hey, Paul, I got something.
Yeah, what's up, Kurt? Good morning to you, man. Good to see you.
Sorry I was late.
Oh, no worries.
We're having a kind of an issue down in Arizona with guys and their safety glasses, mainly prescription glasses. And the trend is that guys are just wearing their prescription glasses with a simple side shield, and they don't have the proper frame. And our take on it is, we are obligated to provide you with PPE, the necessary PPE. And for those that wear glasses, we provide you with covers to put over your glasses. And they're not the most comfortable thing. And
they're not the most stylish.
Exactly. But what we're telling people is, look, you only have one set of eyes, and invest in your own personal safety to go use your insurance or your wife's insurance, whatever, or out of pocket, and go get yourself some prescription safety glasses. And we just are having a lot of pushback on that, where guys just don't feel like, they feel like we are obligated to buy those for them, and we're not.
Right.
And yeah, you can spend upward. I mean, I spent $500 on mine because they're tinted and they change and they're comfortable, and you don't have to spend that much. You can get them for as low as $70, $80, I hear, at Walmart. But just getting people to buy into, investing in their own personal safety,
Yeah.
So
when it comes to safety glasses, I always tried to find the most ugly, outlandish pair that I could find. I always thought that was kind of cool,
Yeah, it's not.
My mom was a chemist, a porcelain chemist, And so she had to make, she had her PPE, she had to wear like bunny suits sometimes, right? And these outlandish goggles and safety glasses, and it'd be like, I'm gonna wear these bad boys, you know what I mean? So no, I got you. It's an ethic, it's a culture, right?
It is, and it's just when some people just feel like we're obligated to buy those, and that's just not the case. We'll provide you with the covers, but if you don't like the covers, then go invest in your own personal safety and get some damn prescription safety glasses that are comfortable for you.
And Kurt, what do you do in that instance as a safety leader? What do you do with
We just
that
push back
individual?
on it. We make them do it. It's just that simple. But this is like a trend going on in Arizona, and it's it's not like a 5 alarm fire or anything, but it's
Until someone loses an eye, right?
until someone, and we had, just to let you know, we had 2 recordables last year from Arizona. Both of the recordables on there were getting something caught in the eye. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it is something that we really are pushing back on. But we are not giving in. We are not buying them for them. And no company, I don't think, should. Maybe, my old company, Northern, if you had a superintendent that's been with the company for 15 years and, he has the seniority. Yeah, I've seen us as a perk of that get, purchasing, but for your average journeyman apprentice that, only has a couple years of service, if that, no, we are not buying them, so.
Yeah.
Just sometimes guys just get in that mentality of, oh, well, you're our employer, you're required to. No, we're not required to. So
A lot of expectations out of an employer these days.
I mean, we're in oil and gas with the whole FR clothing thing. You're required to buy us. No, we're required to provide you with FR clothing, but I'm not going to go buy you a 600 pair of coveralls. That's not happening. You're going to invest that yourself. I'll give you some FR shirts, but if that's not good enough for you, go get your own coveralls.
Yeah.
You give a little bit. Some people just try to take advantage of you and want everything. So you just got to fight back.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate because today too, Kurt, you have to be an employer of choice, and that's what's hard about it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know.
It's tough for y'all being in really an employee kind of led market right now when it comes to this
Well,
stuff.
if you give in to one person, then you got to give in to everybody, and
Yeah, right.
it's just not, we're just pushing back. It's
Yeah.
So that's really what I got.
Yeah.
Hey, I can tell you right now, I purchased my own spy safety glasses with my prescription in them. Those are only $150. They're Z87 rated.
Yep.
They aren't super expensive, and they fit well. They're pretty stylish. I even wear them when I'm out shooting on the weekends.
Yeah, you invested in your own personal safety, And
yeah, I was going to say those are actually cool enough that with the style today, you could even wear them just to wear them. I mean, so the point is, there is stuff out there that could bridge that gap. You need a pair of glasses, you get it, and you wear them all the time if that's really what you wanted to do. Not to say that's necessarily preferable, but
heck, Oakley now makes prescription safety
who's
glasses.
Who's not going to be changing those Oakley,
I'm actually pricing out a set of Oakleys now, safety glasses with transition lenses, and they're about $350.
Yeah, well, maybe we've discovered the formula here, and that is, provide them with a pamphlet and some information that says this is a place you can get this stuff. Like I said, it's kind of a culture and an ethic that you put out. It's not so much that you're not doing this, do it. It's here's some resources maybe that can help you.
Yeah.
Things like that. Like I said, it's a real accommodating workforce right now, but we have to figure out ways, if that's how it is, we have to figure out ways to be able to bridge that and then say, hey, I can't accommodate you by buying it, but I can show you some resources and some stuff that you might think is cool, or if it's a fashion statement on a job site that you're looking for, they make stuff.
I think a lot of people are under the notion that, I spent almost $500 for mine, but I'm as blind as a bat. So I had a special prescription. you can get them for, like I said, one guy got them for $75 at Walmart, and they're stylish, and that's what we tell people is there's options out there.
There's options. Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. You only got two of them bad boys, eyesight's really important. I had a cataract surgery last year on both of my eyes. And so I'm seeing a whole new world these days. And so it's kind of awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing that, Kurt. We appreciate that, brother.
Yep.
Anybody else have any near misses or anything that they wanted to chat about when it comes to, hey, something we all need to pay attention to and get more focus on? No. All right. Well, just before we get started for our awesome discussion on lockout, tagout, and electrical job site safety, I did want to just go over our upcoming calendar for our safety forums. So thank you for joining us today. Next month, on the 29th of March, we've got ladder ergonomics. Okay, and then remember, all this is subject to change depending on what you all are seeing out there as far as contractors or an electrical safety need. So March, ladder ergonomics, right? Making sure that we're not playing contortionists on top of these ladders, and that we understand the safe movement and placement of those ladders. In April, we've got trench and land movement safety, which is a big deal with OSHA this year. I don't know if you heard them talk in our OSHA update last month. They're going to be really, as far as OSHA goes, they're really going to be looking at trench and land movement safety and barricading. Okay, so we'll have a session on that. We'll probably bring in Fiore or something like that, somebody who does a lot of land movement. In May, we're going to concentrate or put our efforts towards the OSHA stand down for fall prevention, right? That's something that happens annually. And we'll be bringing in some type of fall protection or covering that area in May. June, it's starting to get hot, so we'll cover OSHA heat. July, I'm not sure where we're going to do it, but we'll do another facility tour this year. We did DIA last year, some of the underbelly of the baggage claim and some places we don't normally get to see. It's a really cool visit, and we can come up with really cool places to go. If you all have any ideas, things like that, we've done things like Union Station, both arenas, right, the airport, places like that. We did the sky, I can't remember the name of the building, but we went on a safety walk of one of the skyrise erections downtown. And so if y'all think of a really cool job site or something you'd like to see, as far as a location goes, we can try and make a contact with those with that owner of that building, or with some contractors that have done work in that building, and see if we can get an exclusive kind of tour. Okay, normally those range from about 20 people at a time, right, for those tours. So once we figure it out and we put it out there, be sure to register for them, okay, because those spots fill up quick. So that's going to be in July. And then August, we'll have our 2024 safety scheduling conversation about what topics we want to get on the plate for 2024, so we can start making some connections and get a schedule out. September is Suicide Prevention Month and Mental Health Awareness, so we will be talking about mental health and its presence in our workforce, really. Okay, you're seeing a lot more mental health issues out there, and we want to be able to identify it, address it, and see if there's a way to mitigate it. In October, it's starting to get cold, so we're going to cover winter driving and fleet maintenance. We don't normally have a safety group in November, but in December, we plan on concentrating on arc flash. So is there any topic in there that you feel doesn't need to be in there and can be substituted for another topic, or do you think that we're pretty good on, or pretty well on point as far as our topics go? Feel pretty good about those?
Paul, when did you say you were doing arc flash safety?
In December.
Okay. I might just make a suggestion for next year's calendar.
Okay.
A lot of us get into summer work that involves a lot of existing equipment and energized shutdowns and verification of voltage and things like that. We do a hard reset on NFPA 70 and training and stuff about in that May time frame of the year, because that's right before that work is going to get hot and heavy for the next couple of months. I don't know if anyone else is in that same boat, but just a recommendation if anyone else is or agrees that that seems to be the time of year when that work really gets intense, and schedules are super tight. So it's a good time for a refresher.
On 7, did you say 70E?
Yeah, 70E, arc flash, just all of the kind of energized work standards.
Okay.
Good time of year to refresh.
Yeah, that's cool. And the new 70E comes out in January of next year. So we'll be able to be abreast of the newest 70E code. Is that cool, Kyle? That comes out in January, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just throwing that out as just a conversation piece there for.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. Yeah, we'll put
forum.
that on topic. And maybe if we get it sooner, we can cover, depending on the need, right? You're saying because that work's starting to pick up. Maybe we can. Well, I'm not opposed to having more than one, if we have to, or bring in something for a specific contractor. These are recorded, so we can always send them out too. I know these are not. These sessions are forums, right? This is an opportunity for us to get into the conversations. It's not necessarily a training, right? It's something maybe to bring back,
Sure.
But we can certainly make that as part of our focus to bring back to your organizations. Cool. Okay. That's the 2023 schedule. So thank you for that, Kyle. And if anybody else has any suggestions, right, of what we can concentrate on or bring into house and talk about, let us know. Okay. All of this is adjustable stuff. We think about this stuff a year in advance. And a lot of times there's more of an immediate need that we can focus in on. So we'll get into those. Today, we're going to talk about lockout, tagout. And we're going to talk about some general electrical job site safety stuff. It's stuff that a lot of y'all know already and are in practice and have procedures. But like Kyle had mentioned, it's always a really good idea to make sure that we understand what it is we're trying to do with the procedure, right? It's not necessarily here's all these steps of what we have to do to make sure this and this and this and this happens, but let's concentrate on why we're doing it, right? So we're all familiar with the engineering controls of lockout, tagout. I'm going to share my screen here. And so, hold on one second. And so it's we all understand all the different measures of lockout, tagout, right? But we want to make sure that we're paying attention to lockout, tagout as a whole, right? Not just for electrical. Lockout, tagout means anything that's, say, energized electrically, mechanically, or under pressure, such as water valves, gas lines, things like that. Okay, there's lockout, tagout policy and procedure for all of that. Okay, so just want to make sure that we're focusing in on those. I'm pretty sure as a group of professionals that you've had to lock out, tag out more than just your electrical equipment. Is that correct? Yeah, I'm sure. It's not just lockout, tag out for the electrical stuff, right? If we're having to work, we have all that or had a piece of machinery breakdown like a trencher or a backhoe or something like that, and you have to work on it, right? You need to de-energize some stuff. Okay, so what is lockout, tag out? You all know about it. It's practices and procedures to safeguard employees from things like when they're working on a piece of equipment, maintenance, things like that. There needs to be a procedure. So what is lockout? Lockout is normally the engineering control. Okay, the means of locking something out, making sure that it cannot be energized, whether that's, like I said, electrical, mechanical, or pressure. And then your tag out, it's a way of identifying what it is that's not in operation. Okay, and who has access to that circuit, right? How many locks should we have and keys should we have for a lockout, tag out? That's a question. Just one. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, just one. Okay. And we need to make sure that we've got enough tag outs All right, so that depending on what it is we're locking and tagging, that you can be identified, the circuit or the means of energy can be identified. And it's vitally important that we do that, okay? This is all OSHA practice, right? The CFR 1910-147. So this is all referenceable within your OSHA standards, all right? Training objections, hey, what is it? What is hazardous energy? There's a lot of fatalities and injuries when it comes to locking out or improper lockout tagout. When should it be done? Whose responsibility is it? And types of devices and tags. Okay, so lockout tagout. Once again, this is something that we need to make sure that we're doing whenever we're servicing or maintaining equipment to keep the operator or the maintenance person safe. Okay, from hazardous energies. Okay, what does it require? Hey, if there's a potential of release of hazardous or stored energy, we need to lock it and tag it out. All right. I'm not going to read to y'all. Y'all understand this stuff. All right. This is just a really good overview and refresher and something we can get into some dialogue about. Okay. Terms. Who's the infected employee? Really, the infected employee is the one who can't use the equipment, right? The person that is having the equipment maintenance, all right? But who is the authorized employee to work on it is the person that locks and tags it out. All right. One key, one lock, right? There's only one access to be able to manipulate that equipment. You have to identify the energy source, whether that's electrical, mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, chemical, right? Anything where there could be potential energy that's hazardous. The device, they're engineering controls, and they make tons of them for all of those applications. Like I said, not just electrical, there's mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic. I mean, all of those different types of lockout engineering controls to handle that, right? How many of y'all have lockout tagouts for whole entire doors, right? You can't even access this room, right? You guys have those type of lockout tagouts, right? So that lockout tagout, that's not for necessarily a piece of electrical equipment or machinery or this, that. You can't even access the area, right? Unless you're an authorized personnel. So those are the type of engineering controls that are important on our stuff. Tagout device, hey, it's a warning device to say, hey, this is not to be used, right? And there should be some identification on it, right? Whose tag is it? Telephone number where they can be reached, and the circuitry at which you're turning off, or what it is. If it's not circuitry, like what is that valve designation or that line designation? Any questions on any of this? And feel free to jump in, because I know you're all safety professionals, and you guys see this more than I do out there in the field. And so feel free to jump in. This isn't really, like I said, a training session. These are just things we need to be constantly circling, right, when it comes to stuff. We don't have to go over that. There are some exceptions when it comes to lockout, tagout. I wouldn't say there's necessarily exceptions. If there's a way of eliminating the power source, you don't have to lock and tag it out. Okay. Remember, if we're doing our safety checklist correctly, really should only have to don that PPE one time, right? When it comes to that, to de-energizing a piece of equipment or locking it out. If we have selective coordination and labeling, and we all went to an electrical panel, you open it up and you can't tell what a single circuit is. All the time, right? I mean, it's infamous in our industry, right? And so right there is where this whole procedure starts, right? And that's the identification of your energy, okay, and what it's doing, where it's going. So I would start with labeling. That's the first administrative control we need to pay attention to is what is our designation or identification of our energy, right? Like I said, electrical, mechanical, pneumatic. We need to be able to identify not just what it is, but where the energy is coming from. So if we're doing de-energization correctly, like I said, you only have to don that PPE one time, and you can ensure downstream of that energy through selective coordination and everything like that. The PPE required for whatever that is. So I wouldn't get complacent with this process. Labeling is the most important. Okay. And if operations that have to work, whether you're locking and tagging out a circuit or you have to do something hot, right, you should have an administrative control in place to document that. We do that through different types of JSAs, right? Job site safety analysis and templates. So that, there's a control in place that says we understand the work, the hazards of that work, and the qualifications of the individual that needs to perform that work. Okay, those administrative controls. And you must have, right, like it says here, you must have and if you don't have, you have to establish an energy control program, okay, within your company. Like I said, that's energy control procedures, okay, on what you need to be doing, the training of your employees on how to perform that type of control program, right, qualified personnel, and then review it periodically, right. How we always done it is something I've heard a million times. This is how we've always done it. This is how we've always done it. Okay, so it's important for you to go back to some of your processes at times and say, hey, are we doing it right? Have we not been doing it right? Or what are some new things we need to change? You guys ever change your safety policies? For sure, right? It can't be just, this is how we've always done it, right? Safety is something that if we don't pay attention to and proactive about, we're going to be reactive about. So really, and those changes come abruptly, don't they, when it comes to your safety policies? They don't come prior to an accident, right? They usually come after an accident. So check out your policies, okay? And having discussions like we have, like these near miss discussions, right? These things that, hey, if we're seeing something out there that was treated negligible, is it something we need to let each other know about, right? Safety is not just out. I mean, it's everybody's responsibility. So review your stuff, get into some conversations about it, right? And see if there's adjustments that need to be made. What do you need to know about it? Hey, authorized employees, okay? We have to be able to recognize, once again, what the hazard is. Also, energy control procedures, right? To isolate it. Okay, affected employees. Like once again, the affected employees is the one that's really not the is usually the one that can't use the equipment. They're the ones who are affected. Okay. Yeah, and then when it comes to regarding energy control procedures, there's a means of shutting it down, and there's also a means of starting it back up, right? So checkpoints that you need to make, right? Once you're maintaining that equipment, you're doing a new installation or something like that. So there's a process of shutting it down, right? But there's also that process of turning it back on. Okay, so make sure you've got something in place that says in your JSA, this is the hazard, this is the employee, this is the training they've received, this is the shutdown procedure, and this is the re-energization procedure. Okay. What is hazardous energy? Hey, that could be, once again, that's electrical, a mechanical, hydraulic, pneumatic, right? So if you're maintaining or anything, this type of equipment, right, and it's under any type of pressure, we need to pay attention. There is a difference between, and we'll get into this in the future slides, but there's a difference between lockout, tagout, and okay, machine guarding. Okay, but machine guarding is something we want to pay attention to. All right. What is hazardous energy? Hey, anything that could become kinetic energy, right? It's potential energy to kinetic energy in all its terms, right? It could be hydraulic, chemicals, any other, anything under pressure. Sources, live electrical lines. Do we deal with those? Yeah, we do all the time. Capacitors. Y'all ever worked with capacitors? Not a whole lot of companies still deal with capacitor banking, things like that. You guys ever deal with capacitors? Andy, Joe, more of your engineering, right, and specialty equipment deals with capacitors. We don't have a whole lot of electricians adding capacitors to motors and transformers and things like that. Usually it's the piece of equipment that's got it, or it's a specialty piece of equipment, right? So it means that there's probably a specialty way of shutting it down and operating. So you also need to understand the equipment at which you're working with, okay? Can anybody out there even identify a capacitor? Right, I hope so, right? But if not, a lot of people have never seen a capacitor, right? You get into like a residential electrician, they're like, oh, this looks like a battery, or something like that, right? Yeah, test it. Lasers are also hazardous, right? They can cause a number of damage. Hydraulic lifts, pneumatic air pressure. Once again, it's not just electrical. Springs. Any auto mechanics here in the house? I had to change out any of your suspension in your awesome 4-wheel drive vehicle. Yeah, there's some pressure there, right? There's some kinetic energy if you do not pay attention to it, right? You've got springs, you've got not just your circular bushing spring, but you've got leaf springs, things like that, weight, pressure. So all of that, all right, there's a means of de-energizing, okay? What kind of energies can happen? Well, all kinds, all right? Any type that you can think of when it comes to not ensuring, right, that hazardous energies and unwanted energies are present, right? This person right here, it looks like he might have lost a finger or two, okay? I don't know what this injury was caused from. It doesn't look like an electrical injury to me. Looks like it got smashed, you know, to me. I don't know, but injuries can happen not just to your hands, right? It can happen to any part of your body that is close or near, right? So it's not just cuts and scrapes. We're talking about what if it's chemicals, right? Burns, things like that, right? If there's under pressure.
Eye injuries.
What's that?
Eye injuries.
Eye injuries.
Could be eye injuries.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When I was an apprentice, Andy, we were doing, I think we were building a school. Or we were demoing out some stuff in the school for a remodel, and the lighting was 277, right? And we had just gotten there for the day, right? We had some other crew in, I think that was working over the night, because schools are a fast turnaround. You got to get schools done, right? So sometimes you have to open your shifts up, right? And so I show up, my foreman didn't have his safety glasses on. Okay, pops his head up into a tile, right? Moves the tile, gets up the ladder, just above, just where his head could go above that tile, right? To take a look, he turned his eye like that, and there was a 277 ungrounded conductor that poked him right in the eye.
Oh,
Yeah, he fell off the ladder, you know, got a nice little shock, you know, but one, right, the previous awesome electrical apprentice or whoever it was didn't safeguard that circuit, right, the way they should have. Left it out there, right? Probably was operating or working that box while they were on the shift, and you got another person coming in to kind of carry on the work. Was there a debrief, at least, right, from one crew to another that says, hey, this is where we stopped, this is what we were doing, right? Where is that analysis? Do you all do daily workflow analysis for your teams in the mornings, as far as your scopes of work? Like, this is what we're doing today, this is where we left off yesterday, or the last crew did. Those check boxes, right? Because those are important. You know, you need to know where the stage of work and the scope of work is. When I came through, I got very fortunate. I came through with Carlton Electric, and we had a daily log that we filled out every day. What day of the week it was, the weather, the temperature, was it raining, was it snowing, the scope of work, who was on the site as far as our crew goes, the schedule for the day. All of that stuff as a safety precaution, just so the whole entire team really knew what was going on, right? And so we would have those, and for those purposes, because we were doing projects where you take it out of your hands and somebody else is putting it in their hands, you know. And so we needed to make sure we're all on the same page. So those are important. You know, if you have a daily work log, something you can share with your other teams. Because we know we hide people sometimes in our industry, right? This job's over, and I need, you know, and I'm going to bring this person or this foreman over to this job because we're waiting on this, that, and the other. And y'all do that? Absolutely, right? But does that new, even journeyman on the job, understand the scope of work, where work is, right, and what it is they're going to be doing? You know, because they could pop their head right up into that ceiling tile and turn their head like that. Right now, if you had safety glasses, it'd have been a little different. You know what I mean? But But things to think about, right? I don't want to dwell too much on it, but administrative controls are so important. Okay, signed that people understand them, right? Accountability. Fatalities and injuries, hey, they were caused because it couldn't stop a piece of equipment or that circuit, right? Or failure to disconnect the power source. The failure to dissipate residual or stored energy, right? Such as pressure from a line. Accidental starting of equipment, right? Power was still available, right? But because somebody else maybe didn't know and energized it for whatever reason, right? It operated. And then failure to clean your work area. Any of y'all big clean freaks out there on your job sites or your working spaces? That's a pretty big deal, don't you think? Man, I can tell you, I'm an electrician, right? I have messy floors. I do. You know, my pipe, my MC stripping, right? Even my little cuts of EMT, right? Things like that. I was off 1 inch here. I'm going to shave that off, right? Well, that shaves off and it's right at your feet and it's round, you know? So it's important for us to every now and then police your area. Okay, take a look, not just the area as far as the shrapnel of your work, okay, but your tools. How many of y'all know, or that's just yourself, you have a tool pouch, but how do you line them all up around that work area, right? Instead of taking those linements that you're working on and putting them back in your pouch, you lean them up on the top of your electrical panel. You know, things like that, okay? So make sure that you're cleaning your work area, not just of your material, but of the shrapnel of your material and your tools, okay? Keep that stuff clean and make sure that it's stowed in a way that it's not going to create a hazard to you, okay? Let's see, fatality example. Hey, and this is a supermarket, this is cardboard crusher, okay? There wasn't a safeguard for that machine while he was working on it and he got crushed, okay? Do you think that there was probably a lockout, tagout, or an isolating of energy procedure there? Maybe there was. We were talking about this before. Safety is an ethic. Okay. So we can put every safety measure in place that we can think of, right? Such as, hey, I can give you these covers for your prescription glasses, but I can't make you wear them. You know, or I can make you wear them, right, by removing you from the job site because you're not following procedure, right? And you're creating a hazard, right? A potential hazard, right? And that's where you're going to get your arguments because it's a potential hazard. No, it's not. Nothing happened. Well, hasn't happened yet in this instance, right? Maybe it hadn't happened before, but there wasn't safeguards put into place to work on that piece of machinery, and now that person doesn't go home today, right? So it's important that you have those and accountability for that, right? Person that was operating on that, did they understand that without de-energizing it, it could crush them, right? Complacency is really what it is, right? It's, I got it, you know, I can handle it until you can't. So yeah, it came down on top of this person, definitely an OSHA recordable. so you know, you got to be cool, okay? When is it required? Hey, when someone is servicing something, right? Whenever there is anything that could cause a hazard or to start up a release of energy, right? The release of energy, right? That's when it's needed. When there's a hazard, if energy can get out, okay? You know, well, there's another way. Remember, eliminating the threat, right? So it's not just locking and tagging it out, it's eliminating the threat. So here's another story. We were doing 24-hour turnarounds of 7-Elevens. Okay, so which means they had the managers there and some of the people for the 7-Elevens there to an overnight turnarounds, right? Where you change all the lighting, you change all the counter equipment, right? You do some stuff with the freezers, right? And the lighting in there, and you're done in 24 hours, right? I'm working on, once again, a lighting circuit. Apprentice. I wasn't locking and tagging out my circuit. I was the red tape. Put my red tape over that circuit that's shut off, right? Effective means of locking and tagging that out. Yeah, it worked great, okay, because I'm up there working on it, and the manager, that's the lighting circuit, was the same circuit that seemed to have the plug to his computer. Okay. And so I'd be working on it and stuff like that. I'd turn it off and put my very secure piece of red tape over it. And about 20 minutes into the project, I get some fireworks, right? You gotta get the little fireworks sometimes when you're working on stuff hot, right? Got some fireworks. Get back down and go look at the circuit. Red tape's just hanging off to the side and the circuit's on. And I yell out, "Hey, circuit," I think it was circuit 15 or whatever it was. Circuit 15, don't turn it back on. I'm tagging it, not locking it. I'm tagging it. Put the tape back on about 20 minutes later. Right? Come to find out the manager kept running back and forth from his office to outside because he couldn't use his computer or something like that, right? So he was going back and forth waiting for his computer to re-energize every single time he had to turn it back on. And so finally what I did is I didn't lock it and tag it out. Okay, I ended up removing the threat. Okay, which I opened up the panel and I removed the circuit breaker. I removed that source of energy for that circuit that I was working on. So granted, it took some failures to come up with that. Right. And I got very lucky that I didn't, right, that it was just some fireworks, right? That I didn't get hurt or damage anything. So I removed the circuit, just pulled the plug. I pulled that circuit right out of the panel and said, okay, you can't turn this on now, manager. Because it wasn't so much that I didn't want to use a lockout tagout, it's I didn't have it. So that's important concepts too, right? Does your workforce and do your people out there have the lockout tagout means, right? For whatever it is they're trying to eliminate the threat of. So how many of y'all do a periodic check on your crews out there for your lockout tagout?
Right. Yeah, we give all of everybody that comes in, even if they green guys, anybody that get a lockout tagout kit from us, and everybody gets one. And it's, you got this, and on the big jobs we have a big old lockout tagout kit that has pretty much anything you think of, but everybody has their own individual one and that they take on. And I think it's, I've seen it. I had photos from the guys the other day. I said I need safety photos on the job site. Send me something, and 5 minutes of this lockout tagouts all over, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, I put you on the spot, and you actually are doing something. That was nice. So
yeah, that is nice, and that's good to see. And that's one of the things when we're talking about an ethic, right? We need to incentivize safety. We need to point it out, because we'll point out when there's a safety violation, won't we? Let's point out when someone's doing safety, not just to the minimal standard, right, but to a higher standard. That deserves a praise, right? Because one injury, right, you all as some of y'all as business owners and big project stuff and safety pros, one injury, right, can really damper your productivity, and sometimes your whole business, depending on what that injury is. And so, yeah, make sure that they've got the equipment right now. That equipment for locking and tagging out, right? They make all different kinds of stuff, and there's more stuff in the slides as we go along here. But I wanted to make sure that we identify there's a difference between locking, lockout, tagout, and machine guarding. Okay, machine guarding. To me, machine guarding for electrical, hey, that's your dead front. Okay, stuff like that, right? Machine guarding. Brackets or barricades or shields, right, on our electrical equipment. There's some guarding there, right? Sometimes you have to remove that guarding in our electrical equipment to operate on it, right? That guarding is there for a reason, right? You guys have to remove a barricade or remove a shield or remove a dead front or remove something to operate on that piece of machinery. Well, that's a guard, okay? And comes in many different sizes and shapes, right? And different pieces of equipment, all right? Servicing examples, just make sure we're guarding. We're going to get into some of the guards here in just a second, but guarding of equipment, right? What did it say? Machine guarding. Yeah, machine guarding is just what needs to be put in place in normal operation. All right. So if you notice a saw, no dead front on a cabinet, something like that, right? Or anything that's using energy or has the potential of a hazard, there should be some type of guarding on that piece of machinery. All right. Normally, when you, how many of y'all have a table saw at home? You guys have a table saw? I have a table saw at home. Okay. But when I do my table saw cutting, I don't use all of those guards. Do you? They're there for a reason. Right? Guarding, right? Removing those guards can actually remove a UL listing from a product. Okay. And so that's important, right? Those guards were there for a reason. That piece of equipment had a guard for a reason, a shield, a barricade, a barrier to protect you from a hazard. Now, what you do with that protection, right? I don't need that. I've got nimble enough fingers to work my table saw right around that. Yeah, until I don't. You know what I mean? So just be careful of that, right? The machines they come with guards, and if you see something without a guard, it's because somebody had to either maintenance it or had to do something to it, okay, and didn't correctly put it back together or didn't think it was important, right? I got this extra bolt here, don't know where it goes, you know, no big deal. Machine works until the guard falls onto the machine, right? And then you're having a good time. So be careful of that. And remember that lockout tagout is a means of removing a hazard. Installing, constructing, adjusting, modifying, unjamming, cleaning, lubrication or inspection, right? And setup and preparing a normal function. Those are all indications of where you need to lock and make sure that there's no energy potential there. Okay, because those are the types of work that that people do that causes injuries because of energized work, regardless of the energy. Energy isolating device. You've all seen these, right? What is a circuit breaker, right? Right, that's a switch, right? I could turn that off to safeguard something, couldn't I? As long as it's labeled and I know where it goes and where it's coming from. Pipe valve, right? Can I get pressure from this valve? Absolutely. I turn that thing on. Okay, bad things could happen on the other end where I'm working. Make sense? Machinery blocks, things like that. Anything that can positively block or isolate energy, they make guards for. Okay, and lockout tagout devices for. Okay, so you've got like your standard disconnect here, right? We've all seen these, right? You've got stuff that can isolate individual circuits, as well as you can lock that whole can out, right? Up here at the very top, you can lock that whole can out. All right, eliminate the energy source, right? Test it downstream, right? And then not only do you know that what the hazard is or isn't, you know the PPE that you need to don, right, to perform that work. And there's these, you don't see these very often, or maybe you guys do, but I don't see electrical plug locks. Do you guys see that a lot? I rarely see it. I know as electricians, when we're on a job site, we're responsible for all electrical on that job site. Am I right? That's right. So so it's not just that you need to make sure that your people and your company is adhering to this type of stuff. It's the responsibility of the electrician on a job site to make sure everybody else on that job site is utilizing this type of practice. Okay. And y'all ever seen a nasty extension cord on a job site? Never, right? Yeah, they're all pristine and brand new extension cords, electrical cords out there on that job site. Right? Hey, you got a messed up cord, you have an electrical hazard, whether it's your cord or somebody else's cord. Okay. I had when I was an apprentice, I had one of my foremen go to a plumber and say, hey, look, you need to do something with that cord. That cord's a hazard. And the plumber said, okay, we'll get right on it. I think it was maybe a week later. Right, my foreman went, you still got that ratty cord? That's a safety hazard. If I see it here tomorrow, I'm going to cut the cord. Okay. Now, granted, that plumber said, I dare you to cut my cord. You know what I mean? So you have to be careful on how you do things. Okay. Like I said, it's an ethic. Okay, you don't go around cutting people's cords because you're the electrician on the job site. There's a means of escalation, right? You don't have to eliminate, right? You want to eliminate the hazard, but let's not create other hazards right downstream of that, right? We're talking about locking, tagging things out and safety. Okay, you don't want to start going on cutting your cords so they can, deal with a different type of hazard in your work area. You know what I mean? So there's a means of being able to do that. And as the electrician, right, once again, we're responsible for that, for the electricity. Okay, so be careful. You don't see too many, back again, you don't see too many of these locked outlet plugs very often, but they're still out there. You see the panel locks as well as your disconnect locks all the time. Now we're talking about things that with valves, right? There's lockout, tag out stuff that you may see or have to utilize, right? I don't know how many y'all are doing a whole lot of this type of stuff where you've got to disconnect stuff. Maybe you're doing life safety systems and you're checking out the flow of your dampers or whatever, right? Or you need to make sure that your life safety system isn't energized, right? Or the water's not ready to go. Hold on, I'm hitting multiple buttons here. We're way ahead of ourselves. So yeah, so the valve, right? There's a means of locking it all out. You're dealing with gas pressures, right? This right here is for gas. And so there's lockout, tag out examples for that. All right, make sure it's shut off and then it's de-energized for the area that you're working in. Pneumatic lockout, tag out examples, right? It's usually a valve that they're keeping open or closed. Or open, right? So you can see the pressure gauges, right? So you're either keeping something open or closed depending on where that pressure or that energy is going on with pneumatic stuff. Physical blocks, right? You can't even access this area, right? You just put a big barricade over it, lock it, make it so that it's not even exposed. Okay. You can't even get to the tower there to operate it. Group lockout, tag out devices, right? This is where some bad things can happen, right? We were talking about communicating and everybody being responsible for safety. We were talking about group lockout, tag outs. It could be that you've got multiple phases along the line that you're doing work. Okay, ultimately, how many guys use multiple lockout, tag out procedures? Any of y'all? Go ahead, Joe. Or group lockout devising.
Sometimes a lot of times, we'll have, everybody will have their lockout tag out label and everybody has to put it on the lock and then you can't turn it back on until everybody's off.
Tell everybody, right?
Not where we can actually use it, but most of the time, not really.
Okay, yeah, and now this is used for more of those bigger jobs, right? You have multiple people working on something, right? You don't want to just come and remove your lock, right? Because you've got a whole bunch of other people do it. Everybody's responsible, not just for everything around them, but for their own safety, right? That's why that's there. It's that they want to ensure that, hey, it doesn't matter what along the line of that job or that work or scope of work is. I have a responsibility on it, okay? And my lock's going to stay there until I'm done, okay, for my safety, okay? A lot of times, when we're using individual lockout tagouts, we can take care of, because if there's only one lock and key, right? One individual can say, hey, I've got it for this entire scope of work, right? But depends on what, that scope of work is. If I want to take it into my own hands and not worry about this individual over here, right? And I'm doing qualified personnel, right? Who should be locking, tagging things out. Yeah, I'm going to ensure that my own safety is taken care of, and I'll have my own lock on there. Okay, anybody else want to bring up instances about group locking and tagging? Examples, situations, horror stories?
Paul, it's Kevin.
Hey, Kev.
So even just a journeyman and apprentice, that could be group lockout, tag out. And that's a good practice to do because you're both probably working on it anyway, and you both should have a lock on there.
And you know what? To have your apprentice start getting in the practice of locking and tagging things out as far as a procedure and muscle memory and work memory, it's probably important that they do that every time, right? Like I said, it's an ethic. Is it one person's responsibility to lock that tag out? Or is it everybody that's qualified to work on that responsible? Right, so, yeah. Any questions or more comments about group tagging? Awesome. So, hey, this was me back in the day. This is how I used to lock and tag out my circuits. I've learned a lot since then as a safety professional. No, I've never done anything like this, but this is an example, right? We see hack stuff in our industry all the time. And so remember that safety is everybody's responsibility, even though that red piece of tape might not pertain to your scope of work, it pertains to somebody's scope of work. Okay, and so you see safety stuff, address it. Say something to somebody, right? Raise that awareness. Because if you don't, like I said, if you're not proactive, you will be reactive to safety. So just point it out. What is tag out? Well, they make many different kinds, right? Do not operate, it's locked out, being serviced, do not open, right? However, your administrative control puts together that tag out for that scope of work, you need to identify it. Okay. Singularity identified as far as your devices. They need to be in a means that you can't, like tape, right? I can just remove a piece of tape. Okay, so you need to have it secure enough to where it can't be easily removed. Okay, because someone will try and get that circuit on. I've been on job sites where I've had to disconnect my entire turtle because there was a problem with my turtle, right? Like people are just trying to get up into it. You know what I mean? So make sure you're locking stuff out in a means that people know it should be turned off, right? Don't use the piece of tape. You use the lockout, tag out, engineering control, and make sure it's labeled, right? What is it doing? Where is it coming from? Who's responsible for that tag? Musts. Okay, y'all use JSAs, right? We talked about work reports for the day. JSAs are vitally important. The administrative side, it should start in-house, like I said, with the scope of work. If you are doing energized or hot work, you need to document that, right? So NFPA 70E is steps and procedures, right, for operating and maintaining live electrical work. Or not operating, but maintaining and troubleshooting live electrical work, right? And there's only a few instances where OSHA says that you're allowed to do it, right? OSHA says that if the hazard of de-energizing that circuit or energy creates a larger hazard than keeping it energized, then it should not be done. So there's instances in the electrical industry where we cannot turn that off, right? Hospitals, ventilating, things like that. If we're working in special occupancies, things like that, where we can't turn it off, we need to make sure that we're adhering to the PPE requirements and the policies of NFPA 70E in accordance with OSHA. So when it comes to energy control procedures, hey, you got to understand the scope, the purpose, who's authorized, rules and techniques, right? When you're creating these JSAs, and I'm going to show you, I know we're running out of time. I didn't get a chance to get to half the stuff that I've got. That's what happens when I get to facilitate the meetings, is I got so much stuff. And I like to talk to y'all too. I'm not here just to read off a slide. I like to get into the dialogue. So I rabbit hole a little bit. I apologize about that, but at least we're going to cover lockout, tagout today. Minimal stuff, right? You need to communicate, prepare for a shutdown, shut down the machine or the energy, disconnect or isolate it, apply the tag, render it safe, which means testing. Okay, so don't just go lock it and tag it out and go back and start working. Test it. All right. You guys ever turned off the wrong circuit? I have. So just test it when you get back to what you're working on. Okay. That way you know. Okay. And then verify. Right. Notify the affected area, shut down machinery. Once again, this is all that same stuff. Okay. Steps: notify employees, shut down equipment, isolate energy, attach your device, release stored energy, right? So retest it and make sure it's safe, verify it's locked out, and maintenance it after that. Stored energy, pressured vessel, slowly open the receiver tank. Like I said, you're usually opening or closing when it comes to pressure. And there's ways of keeping things open and closed, right? For a capacitor, you want to release the energy from a capacitor, just ground it. Okay, all of those negative electrons will go out of that capacitor. Okay, right to ground. Cool. You guys got any questions on any of this? This is all pretty fundamental stuff for y'all, right? Hopefully we're touching some bases today.
Hey, Paul, I was gonna say something.
What's up,
On-
Kurt?
On that procedure for the lockout, tagout, another thing that I've learned also that they have added in there is at the very end, after I've tested it, and then after I've verified that the machine can't start up, you should also ground it, ground that circuit out. That
Just
way, if it's
Intentionally
backfed,
ground it just in case.
yeah, if it's backfed or somebody else somehow it was able to be energized some other way, it's
Yeah.
already to ground.
Backfeeding is a very good point, Kurt. Because we're in there trying to find a problem, right? If something's backfed, that's the problem, but you can't identify it just by shutting, so that's a very good point. I've never heard of intentionally grounding a piece of equipment, but if you want to safeguard it from energy, it's not a bad way. If you're going to intentionally ground it, I would say disconnect your power to it. But I see what you're saying. Anybody ever intentionally ground equipment? No, just remove whatever source, right?
Yeah, it more of a line crew type situation for us with the high volt stuff, where
Yeah,
if they're working on something, they intentionally ground it.
I see. Okay, yeah, because you're dealing with a pretty big potential energy.
Yeah, my dad was a lineman, and he told me from day one, you always ground out before you put your hands on it.
Gotcha. Good point. Thank you for that. That's a good something we need to pay attention to, right? And maybe do. Where else were we? What do I do if I can't lock out and tag out the equipment? What do you do? What do you all do? Create a hot work permit, right? Do a JSA. Get some administrative controls in hand, right? Communicate the hazards. Get qualified, trained personnel in there, right? Is that what y'all do? I hope so.
Yeah, and for us, a lot of times too, it's you can schedule. So if you can't do it that particular time, schedule some downtime on an off hour to do
Yeah.
your work instead of.
Yeah, you see that all the time. You see that all the time. You can't just shut off a building, right? You want to be able to shut it off. But like I said, if unless those two risks, right, or that risk of de-energization causes a bigger threat, you're going to have to come up with another schedule, right? Especially if your policy within your organization is no hot work, right? And you see a lot of that, right? You do see a lot of companies, they have, hey, unless it says hot work and this JSA and this scope of work is done, you're not to touch a live circuit, right? You see that a lot. And I've heard a lot of stories about people that got injured, right, because they did some hot work under a no hot work policy, and they were down the road electric, man. They were somewhere else after that. Okay, because once again, safety is an ethic. Okay, take the time to de-energize, right? Take the time to isolate the hazard. What else we got? Minimal lockout startup required. I'm not worried about that. And when you all say, everybody, don't touch anything when you go to turn your stuff on, when you go to light the candles. You guys ever say, don't touch nothing? Just the person that's hitting that switch? It's not a bad practice, right? Just in case. Because once again, it's not about so much about the procedures of how we shut it down, but how do we re-energize it, right? Let's be safe about it, right? Let's stay clear. Let's remove our tools from the area, right? Hazards, right? And make sure it's in the operating positions that it needs to be in. Right, and then you can start releasing that lockout, tagout, and safety protocol. And that's it for the slides. I have a whole nother set of slides to go. Okay, so it's only going to take us about another hour. All right, for our safety this morning. No, I'm just kidding. I did have another set of slides for general job site safety. There are some good slides and funny ones in there, and we'll save that maybe for another time. I appreciate everybody. It's 8:38 right now. Thanks everybody for their time. I hope you were able to gather just at least a good conversation and some reminders of today's lockout tagout stuff. Remember that it's not just electrical equipment, it's anything that has a potential of causing a hazard due to stored or hazardous energy. Administrative controls are important. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time here. I was just kind of doing some digging on different types of JSAs that you can do for electrical work templates, right? And you can go to Google and just type in JSA for electrical work. You can do hot work, anything like that. None of these templates are copyrighted or anything like that, okay? So get in there, find one or create one on your own, okay, for a good JSA and scope of work type of practice, okay? Really, you should be doing a scope of work document every single day, okay? So that you as a leader, your people as leaders can make sure that the job is being done effectively on schedule. What are the parameters, whether that's physical or environmental, document that stuff, right? It's going to help you because when OSHA comes a knocking, they're going to ask the W's, right? Who, what, when, where, why, right? And then the H, how, right? And so they're gonna ask those questions. And if you've got a policy in place, scope of work, job site safety analysis is, you're going to be a lot better off, right? And you're going to have probably a safer environment because if you're following that through accountability and administrative controls, you're going to create an ethic, okay, that is going to be a little bit more safe. Encourage safety, incentivize it, call it out when you see it, both good and bad. And that's how you're going to really get your people bought into it. So like Kurt was saying, how do you get them to buy in? Hey, you have to lead by example. You have to incentivize, like I said, and then you have to hold people accountable too. If they don't do it, hey, there's risks and consequences and repercussions. So, any questions? Any add-ons? Anything anybody else want to cover?
I just had a question for the group. It's just so I had one of my guys. What he likes to do is he'll do is he's the foreman on the job, and he'll lock the panel, and he'll have the key for the panel, and have a sign on the panel that no one can touch this panel and contact me, and has his name everywhere on it. But he has the key. But what's your guys's? If there's a panel that there's a lot of circuits that are being worked on, and there's only you want like one person that's kind of in charge of all of that, what do you guys do in those situations? So that say there'd be like 20 circuits that are locked out in that panel, and he just locks the entire panel, the cover of it, and labels it. Is there anything? What else do you guys do on that?
Is that what you're trying to isolate that entire panel for safe circuitry?
Yeah, just that's his way of that way. No one can touch that panel except him, and he's the one that's in charge of the job, and that's his way of saying, "I this is my panel, and don't touch it. This is what we're dealing with." So
he just uses the key to the panel. Who else has that key?
Just him, but everybody else can get it.
DJ's got it. DJ has one of those keys.
But that's what I get a key for that panel. I could do all that. But I wanted to bring it up because, like, what do you guys do in those situations where the panel has got, there's a couple circuits that are energized and a lot of things that aren't energized, that are landed, that are turned off, and there be so many locks. So what's a good practice that you guys have used?
Hey, Joe, this is Kyle Roman with LEI.
Yeah.
Hey, to answer your question, what we do is we take a similar tactic with locking the entire panel. Instead of using the factory provided key, which you know a lot of people have on their keychain, we have a panel bar that fastens to the outside screws or tucks inside the lip of the outer cover of the panel.
Yeah, the trim.
That has holes in it. We put a lock on that. We found that in the case that you're describing, where there's like 20 circuits you need to lock out, it's just not practical to install, 20 individualized lockout devices. During that phase of construction, we believe we deserve, ownership and control of that panel. That's something I'm willing to argue if anyone disagrees with that on the job site. And then we lock the panel out. That way we're in control of all of the circuits. And then there's additional holes in that panel bar where if somebody needs to put if we need to add to that, like a hasp, and add additional personal locks and stuff like that for people that are working on circuits that are inside that panel, we have the ability to kind of have individual control or, multiple layers of lockout access control through a panel bar. So that's what we do.
That is awesome. Thanks, Kyle. That's kind of like, yeah, thank you. I've been wondering this for a while. I'm bringing it up. It's lockout tagout day. Let's talk. So.
Yeah, you can lock that whole, like Kyle had said, they make some brackets and locking pieces that fit onto that trim right of that panel. And you can secure that whole thing. You can't even open the door. So yeah. Thanks, Kyle, for that. And they have whole electrical room doors, right? You can lock out an entire room.
Yeah.
With that type of barricade and lock.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions or anything like that? I did want to announce that, hey, I know a lot of you all are registered already. If not, get registered for the Summit Awards that is happening on April 20th. Okay, within there, we do a number of highlights of our industry, right? Who's got the awesome projects and some of the big feats that you all as contractors and industry partners are involved in. One of them is safety. So if you were to go to, and thank you, Holly, so much for the reminder and sending the link out. If there's one area that everyone needs to take a look at, and that is the safety evaluation. Okay, that safety evaluation is not meant for a competition, okay, or an award. That is there to evaluate your company on your safety practices and procedures and ethic. Okay, to identify what you have and possibly what you may need within your organization when it comes to safety. Okay, so I'm trying to make it a mandatory thing to be done by all of our incoming contractors to do this evaluation. Okay, it's a benefit to your organization by doing this evaluation. Like I said, to identify areas of your strengths and areas that may need some development. Okay, and then once you do that evaluation, you're automatically entered, depending on the score you get, to award and prizes, okay, for your ethic and your score. Okay, it's categorized by size of contractor. Okay, but it's a good idea for you to get in there and take a look at it if you haven't already. It's a great checkbox, great evaluation, and something you can definitely, after taking a look at your scores, bring back to house and implement some new things. Okay, so do me a favor, jump into that. And hopefully, regardless, hopefully you're registered for the Summit Awards as well. There's really some good stuff. We're going to be having it at InPower Field this year, which is really going to be awesome. We've got some tours scheduled. It's going to be a great venue and a great event. So jump on, get registered, and at least do some evaluations of your safety. Cool. Any questions, anything like that you want to bring up? If not, we've extended a little bit. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said, I hope that like I said, it wasn't really an educational session today. It was more some check boxes to make sure we're paying attention to some things. Okay, and make sure that we're forward thinking about our scope of work, what those hazards are, who's qualified, and what means do we need to take to ensure it's safe. So thanks, everybody. Until next month, let us know if there's any changes or anything you'd like to see.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. You all have a good day and be safe. Be careful. Be warm.
Thanks. Be safe, guys.
Have a good one.
Thanks, DJ. Later. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Kev.
Yes.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Holly.